Westerville, Ohio, founded in 1858, was born amid the strong social tides of America's 19th century. Abolition, temperance, and women's suffrage all came amid the Progressive Age's push for reform and improvement in every aspect of American life. And all these movements found fertile ground in Westerville. Westerville's dedication to temperance garnered the attention of the National Anti-Saloon League, which moved its headquarters and massive anti-alcohol publicity machine to Westerville in 1909. This placed the village at the epicenter of the national lobbying effort to enact prohibition. Since its founding along the banks of Allen Creek in northern Franklin County, Westerville was home to an informed and active citizenry. But when at the height of the push for national prohibition, the town found itself struggling to pave roads and efficiently run its water operations, the reform-minded citizens turned their eyes much closer to home.
By the turn of the 20th century, Westerville was mired in mud and plagued with poor water quality. Otterbein University, which really is a key component of the self-identity of the community at that point in time, was being wooed by Dayton. Dayton was a larger city with better city services, and they wanted Otterbein to relocate there. Westerville residents were incensed by this, and to combat this, decided to vote for 3 bond issues in the amount of $75,000. One that would deal with water and sewage, and another that would deal with the poor quality of the streets in the community. The local newspaper has some great letters and quotes about this, and I just want to read one. This letter writer says, "Witness our dust-laden streets and atmosphere, our parched lawns and gardens, and our homes without baths or water closets. These are all mute yet eloquent evidence of our need of water and sewage." In 1909, something very dramatic happened in the city. The Westerville Board of Trade managed to woo the Anti-Saloon League to bring their national printing headquarters to the city. This brought an increase in population, it brought national recognition, and all of these city issues came to the forefront. And the Anti-Saloon League wanted to see a community that was well run. They had put their money in this community to build the large printing center. They were very active in every organization in the community. They were founders of many of the civic organizations that are still with us today. They were active in every church in the community, and they felt that they should have a hand in seeing how the city was run. And Westerville City Council and the Public Affairs Board did not cooperate or coordinate in their actions. And because of that, the water rates doubled, and by 1915, a bond issue for a new waterworks failed. It is at this point when a group of citizens steps in and says, enough. And they decided to look for a new kind of government. July 31st, 1915, Westerville voters went to the polls and adopted the city manager form of government. There were 5 elected city council members who would in turn choose a city manager to run the day-to-day operations of the city. In January 1916, Westerville became the first village in Ohio to hire a city manager as part of the adoption of the city manager form of government in the community.
The people involved in the debate over the change, from local businessmen and politicians to Otterbein professors and Anti-Saloon League leaders, were well-known personalities in Westerville, says Bill Merriman of the Westerville Historical Society.
Let's talk about some of the leaders in the community, and particularly those who came to town with the Anti-Saloon League in 1909 and 1910. The youngest of those leaders was Ernest Charrington. Charrington was a real workaholic. He headed all departments of the Anti-Saloon League except legal. He worked closely, of course, with Pearlie Baker, who since 1903 had been the head of the National Anti-Saloon League. It so happened that the summer that he was part of the leaders moving us towards the city manager form of government, he was in Common Pleas Court trying to get an injunction against Westerville to stop them from turning off his water at his house. And a gentleman named Tom Tussey, 33-year-old general manager of the Culver Art and Frame Company here in town, a major employer, was named to head a committee which Pearlie Baker joined him on to look into the possibility of going to the ballot with a new form of government. So Tom Tussey was a leader in that effort. Another one was an Otterbein professor named Charles Snavely. The community looked to Snavely for leadership. Later, he served 24 years on city council, and he was on the Otterbein faculty for 39 years. One person we haven't talked about was the mayor who was elected in 1913 and served in 1914 and 15. Joe Larimore didn't think much of the idea of a city manager, but he insisted that he did not actively oppose it. He was deposed in the move to the city manager form. And of course, this brings us to Ray Blinn, who was our first city manager. We took a long time shaping up our utilities until we finally turned, I think it was in 1925, to someone other than an engineer to run the town.
The Anti-Saloon League's work for the new form of government could be seen as a strange dichotomy of purpose, says longtime Westerville Law Director Bruce Bailey. While actively engaging in a national political campaign, the League backed the city manager form of government here in Westerville to minimize politicking at home.
It's fascinating that Westerville is the creation, or at least the first small village to have the city manager form of government, because this very non-political form of government was created by a very political community, because at that point in time in the early 1900s, Westerville was the center of one of the most political movements ever, and really the most successful single issue pressure politics organization in the history of the United States, the Anti-Saloon League. So these very political individuals who changed the Constitution decided in their own backyard to go with a non-political form of government.
So how has Westerville fared with the city manager for the last century? Certainly, it's boomed in physical size and economic power. From a village of about 2,500 residents in 1916, it's grown to a city of 38,000 residents in 2016. From total property value of just $2.4 million in 1916, the city's tax duplicate has grown to one exceeding $1.1 billion today, home to more than 60,000 payroll jobs. Longtime Westerville City Councilman Mike Hayek believes professional management is a big reason for that success.
The city manager form of government is like a business. The CEO assures continuity. The board provides a differing input. The board can change, but if you have the CEO, that continuity assures a long-term view of the city. Not looking at the next election or the next council meeting, it's much more of a long-term view. And when you're building roads that last decades, when you're looking at economic development and employers that we hope will be here for decades, it's much better to have that long view, and the city manager really ensures that continuity.